It's April 1st, and if you thought this was going to be any other video, but yet another 911 video, you're the fool. This is the brand new 992.2 Carrera S, and I'm outside of San Diego for its launch program. And sadly, Mark will not be joining me for this video as he's at home, sitting in his pool and enjoying the fact that he did not have to get on another airplane. I'm here with Chris. So, for the 992.2 Carrera S, this car now makes 473 horsepower and 390 foot-pounds of torque, and it makes more torque for longer. There's a larger area under the curve versus the prior generation 992.1. And naturally, it has increased in price, though thankfully Porsche listens to their customers, so you have more standard features like the sports exhaust, which was widely picked in the prior generation Carrera S. So the increase of price, there's some mental math here, is only 3 to 4% if you factor in the increased standard options. The car starts in the, let's call it, mid 140s, reasonably equipped, and I'm saying lightly equipped, you're in the mid 160s, and once you get to some of these press car specs, you can get nearly to the $200,000 mark. This is a very expensive car. Being the 992.2 generation, yes, you no longer have an analog tach, it's a digital display, you have the latest PCM or Porsche infotainment, and you don't have a traditional key to start the car. On the mechanical side, this still runs the twin-turbo 982 3-liter flat 6 Porsche setup. It is a semi-dry sump, it's direct injected, and this is now running the same turbocharger as the standard Carrera. These are the turbos off of the 992.1 Carrera GTS, thus the identical horsepower. However, it makes less torque, but it makes more torque for longer when you look at the actual dyno plot. They're trying to make this a more drivable car than the outgoing variant. This thing does 0 to 60 in the low 3s, a quarter mile in the 11s. This is a very, very fast car. It does basically everything you could ask out of a drivetrain like this. However, it is now only PDK. The only ways to get a manual gearbox in a 911 now is the Carrera T and GT3. They did this primarily because in the prior generation Carrera S, nobody bought it as a stick. It was a very, very low take rate, and the market has spoken. And Porsche is trying to make this as easy as possible for them to manufacture. Now, from a suspension and braking perspective, this runs the old generation GTS brakes, so you now have 408 millimeter front discs, and obviously they're enormous, and if you're going to do any track work, the steels are more than enough, though you can option in carbon ceramic brakes. The Carrera S gets PTV Plus as standard, so unlike a base Carrera, you get a limited slip differential, an EDIF. In this car's case, you get PASM as standard, which is their adaptive dampers, and you can also option PASM Sport, which lowers the car by about 10 millimeters. The front spring rates increase by like 30-ish%, and the rear is closer to 50. It is a stiffer car. It's a little bit more connected. This has the latest generation of damper hydraulics, which means it can go softer than the old car and firmer, a wider range of adjustment. Essentially the same setup off of the current generation 911 GTS, though you do not get helper springs, which honestly, outside of full droop conditions on track, you're never going to notice. So with that, let's go take this for a quick drive up a mountain road. Not Mark, but yet it's still Porsche time, Chris. Launch control. All right, not an original thought, but turns out the new Carrera S, which is arguably the most important trim level for the 992, the largest number of any trim level, or the most popular trim was the Carrera S, is a very, very good car, and it's very quick. If you have the money and you're looking to buy a do-everything sports car that is essentially supercar capable, that can sit in traffic and be comfortable and has the brand prestige, there's probably nothing better. And it's, you know, kind of a
bit of a broken record.
Yes. Specifically, this 992.2 Carrera S rides better than it used to. When you put it into normal mode, which we're not in, it slackens off the shocks. They're very compliant, like LC500 compliant. You have good visibility like you do in this generation of 911. From the body style, it feels like a normal ass car, which is both kind of its shortcoming. If you're looking for pure drama, you want Bs or you want V8 noises or you want it to be really raw and visceral, there are other cars that do that better than this. This is for somebody who wants that thing that does everything. I will say though, input-wise, Porsche still has the best inputs. The steering of the 992.2 generation, I don't actually think is as good as the 992.1, though my memory could be off. You feel everything through your ass, and it is incredibly approachable. You've never driven this road before. Mark and I use this in the Honda Accord hybrid drive, but how do you feel about its driving dynamics, Chris?
It's, as you said, approachable. Someone like me can go fast, which is saying something. It's, what is it? If you, even with everything off, everything's so progressive. When it lets go slowly, easy, nice and safe. Understeer first before
the back starts to come
before the
around.
back, you know, snaps around and eats you up.
You're a hero sitting in the passenger seat as I mock this car.
That's it.
The PDK gearbox is also, I mean, in normal, it's a bit dim-witted, right? It's trying to just turn this car into almost like an automatic slush box. It's always favoring the highest gear. It coasts itself in neutral when you come up to a light. So if you want to have any great engagement with a car, you need to be in Sport or Sport Plus, and the transmission needs to be in Sport. But when you do that, good God, is this thing basically still the best gearbox in the market. Power, if you are one of the few people who's cross-shopping a 992.1 Carrera S, what you're now getting in the 992.2 is a GTS. It doesn't feel any slower than the old GTS, despite having, I guess, less torque. The gearbox, power band's more drivable, and you are absolutely flying in this goddamn car.
What is it? 30 more horsepower than the outgoing Carrera S. Same torque figure, but as they keep saying, a lot of area under the torque. Under the curve before and after the peak, and it might be a little noticeable.
Brakes, tremendous. This has the steels, and I've never once felt remotely like I'm going to need more braking capacity or stopping power. It's like a car. I guess the question becomes, which 911 should you buy in this generation? I would argue that if you're looking for that second car, which most people are with the Carrera S, though there's a huge number of them that do daily it, the Carrera T on a canyon is more fun because you have the 3 pedals, and this is basically at the point where you can't use all the power. It's so bloody quick that Carrera T allows you to use more of the power band more of the time, and there are so few manual, competent, drivers focused cars left that makes it a special experience. But I can't fault anyone who wants a PDK to buy something like this. Good God.
I would argue you could definitely get away with a normal Carrera. The average person can get away with the normal Carrera. But you're not going to buy a normal Carrera because, someone's going to say oh, 911? Oh, you got a base model. And you're going to be devastated by that.
For the amount of money that this press car is, which is $180,000.
Right.
If you're looking for a more special feeling experience, not better, special, more drama, Bs, for this car, you can buy a ZR1, you can almost get into basically a new Vantage, you can get a Z06, you can get an AMG GT. There are other cars that exist at this price point that may do the drama better than this. So again, if you were one of the lucky people on the planet that can afford a car like this, it is worth sampling the other flavors available in the car world, because you're at that point now where these things, the 911s have gotten so expensive, regardless of how you see the value, that you can buy something exotic for similar money.
Yeah. But I don't think the buyer of this is doing that, because you're not you show up to your country club, your gun club, you're not pulling out you're not pulling out like a Benelli over under out of your Z06. Somebody's gonna go up to you and say oh, you really struck me more as a Stoker man.
All right, with that very strange analogy, Chris, let's head into the final thoughts, sir. Final thoughts on the 992.2 911 Carrera S. Huge thanks to our title sponsor Bridgestone, and of course our Porsche PR reps. Luke, Kyle, Frank, and Calvin continue to be some of our very favorite people in this industry. So what about the car? Well, as you can clearly tell, the new Carrera S is quite good. In fact, there are very few objective complaints you can make. This is essentially the old 992.1 Carrera GTS in place of the new Carrera S. You get all of the pros of that car and essentially none of its cons. You have a more usable power band than the old GTS, and you have better dampers. This car rides exceptionally well, particularly in regular PASM suspension. The car we drove was PASM versus PASM Sport, and it rides better than an LC500 convertible, a car I very recently drove. The car's really only con, other than a lack of drama, is the engine sound. Doesn't sound as good as it used to. It now uses the particulate filters off of the Euro cars, so they lean more heavily on fake engine noise. From a engagement perspective, the PDK is faultless. It is much, much better than a modern ZF 8-speed or the Tremec in a Corvette or a Maserati. Their dual clutch in comparison feels dim-weighted. It's very balanced. You never feel the rear move around on you, at least on mountain roads. I'm sure it's a little different when you heat the tires up and you're on track. The steering, while I don't like it as much as the old calibration, it's still better than all of its competitors, and honestly, it's a really, really good car. I can't fault you for buying one or lusting after one. Really, its only con is price. The vehicle we drove was $180,000 and it wasn't fully loaded. A reasonably well-equipped Carrera S is between $160,000 and $170,000, and you can easily crest $200,000. It is essentially a class of its own, and it is priced accordingly. This is no longer that aspirational purchase vehicle. This is a car you buy when you have a lot of money, and it has sort of been moved further into the price point of almost being a Ferrari competitor. And you can argue whether or not Porsches deserve to be there. It is a great car, but I do remember when Carrera S's, only a couple years ago, 992 generations, were like $150,000 fully loaded. So with that, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon.